Hey everybody, welcome to Leading Thriving Cities. My name is Chad Wright. I'm the founder of Forward Partners. This is our show where we shine a spotlight on leadership in public service, and we have deep conversations about sustainability and how we create a thriving future for our cities. Today's guest is Stephanie Reyes. She's the city manager of San Marcos, Texas. We have a really interesting conversation about the specific challenges of being a city manager of a city that has a college. There's some really interesting insight. If you're in one of those cities, I guarantee you're going to find some value. We went deep into the conversation about her being a breast cancer survivor and really about the perspective, that lens to really judging what matters and what doesn't, and being able to navigate and lead with that perspective. It's such a great conversation. I know you're going to enjoy it. Thanks for joining us on Leading Thriving Cities. Stephanie, thank you so much for being on Leading Thriving Cities. We're just going to jump into the first question. You've been a city manager for how long?
For about 2 years.
Okay.
And so that includes my interim stint as interim city manager and then now as city manager since February 2023.
So fairly early in that journey. Mm-hmm. What's one thing you wish people really understood about what it is to be a city manager?
Just how complicated that it is and how fast-paced it is and trying to keep up. You know, with me, I did not want to get rid of the operational aspect of being in city management. I know a lot of times city managers really focus a lot more on the city council and some of the bigger picture things. Yeah. And so that's important, but I also love the operations. So I've stayed in touch with some of the operations to make sure that it keeps me grounded on what, you know, the organizational needs are and things like that. But that's something that I wish more people would know is just how fast-paced it is, how demanding and challenging. It's hard to navigate, but I think the key is having a very good team because that helps to make sure that you've got the right skill sets to help to look at things from a full perspective.
Before you became interim city manager, did you know how demanding and fast-paced it was? Yes,
to some degree. Okay. Because, you know, I've been in the city manager's office for most of my career. Okay. I've been in city government for I'm going on 24 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So it's been a long time of seeing, you know, I've worked for 6 different city managers prior to, you know, me coming on. And so, and every council's been a little bit different in terms of what the expectations are. And it's not even just the council, though. It's also what the community expects of their city manager in terms of having accessibility and being able to, you know, make their concerns known and make sure that you're responsive to those concerns in a timely manner.
And one thing you mentioned was the complexity. And y'all are about how many people in San Marcos?
About 83,000.
83,000, and you are just south of Austin.
Yes.
And you're a college town.
Yes.
That brings with it just so many complexities. Every one of those elements in and of itself could be complex. Just a town of 83,000 is tough.
Yes.
But then you add in everything else. What are some unique and very complex things y'all have had to deal with?
Well, we've had to work through a lot of challenges with the university because they're continuing to grow.
Yes.
And so trying to make sure that we don't lose the charm that San Marcos is and the things that people love about the community, while still understanding that we need to embrace the fact that we are a university community and we're going to have the challenges of traffic and those, you know, things. But we've had some unique opportunities to really have great partnerships with the university. We have a public transit system that we were finally able to coordinate. And so now riders from the community can ride our Texas State buses, and our Texas State students can ride our CART buses that we have through our capital area rural transportation system. So we've been able to merge those two together, and that's been amazing. We also have the San Marcos River, you know, that runs through our community. So it's really making sure that we have a community that embraces and loves the beauty and environmental, natural scape of our community. And that's one of the reasons that our university students actually love San Marcos, participating on their master plan process. And that is one of the things that has been confirmed, is that a lot of students choose Texas State because of the natural beauty of our community.
That's part of why they go there.
That's that's part of why they go there. And so
Okay.
just the growth that the university is having, but also the growth that San Marcos community is having.
Yeah.
And so trying to see, how do we work collaboratively and making sure that they're getting their needs met with trying to provide for the student all the way around. And then we're providing for our residents. And we know that those two lifestyles don't always mix. And so how do you work through the noise, and things? Why? Because you're going to have school spirit. You're going to have, the big football games. They've gotten really big in football. And that's created some unique challenges for our community who hear the fireworks when there's celebrations going on, who are concerned about that. But then also with the traffic that goes there. So again, trying to make sure that you're providing and being collaborative, but also not being alienating of the community wants, desires, and needs as well.
Yeah.
So that does present some unique challenges.
Unique and very complex, and part of navigating those complexities is probably that relationship with the university.
Absolutely.
How intentional have you had to be with really building and deepening that? Because if you have a good one, we can sit and have a complex conversation. If you don't, it's a little harder.
It is, but we meet monthly with our university administration. The other thing that is different, in the time that I've been with the city, it's gone through ebbs and flows, and we've had different things that we've come together on and things that we've been a part on. The thing that I feel is probably making things a little different now is that you have more university administration who actually live in our community now. Before, they would work and then they would leave, and so there was not that sense of investment in the same way that I would say there is now. And then being able to say, this is my university that I oversee, but this is also my community.
Yeah.
And so not wanting to alienate the things that the community values. And so I've seen a lot more community-centric university administration than we've had in the past.
Okay, that's interesting.
So that's been wonderful, refreshing.
Now, you said a lot of your career has been in the city manager's office. How did you get into public service? What was it that made you want to do this?
I knew I wanted. So it's been very organic. It was not something where I was a little girl and said, I want to be a city manager. Nothing like that. So I am a person of faith, and I do kind of listen to what those steps are. So as I was going through college, and I am a Bobcat, so I graduated from, it was then Southwest Texas State University before becoming Texas State. And I knew I wanted to do something that served the public. At one point, I was looking at doing criminal justice. I got my degree actually in criminal justice.
Okay.
And but realized I didn't want to be an
I don't
officer.
know, Police Chief Reyes has a nice ring to it.
Oh, no. That is such a difficult job. Oh, my goodness. That is such a difficult job that I don't know that I would be the right fit for that. But, I did have a lot of interest, in the criminal justice system. And so I knew I wanted to do something that would be varied. I wouldn't be doing the same thing every single day, but also just to serve and give back. And so got my degree in criminal justice, then decided, okay, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So went and got my master's in public administration there also from Southwest Texas. Yeah. And there was this position that was open at the city of San Marcos, assistant to the city manager.
Okay, so you started as an A2.
I started as an A2 and said, hey, I'm going to get my foot in the door. I'm going to try this out and see if they will, give me an opportunity. And thankfully they did. And who would have thought that almost 24 years later that I'd still be in San Marcos? I thought I was going to get out of San Marcos. It's my hometown. Yeah. So it's really, that is a uniqueness too, because a lot of city managers don't want to be city managers of their own communities. There's too much history.
That does add to the complexity a little bit, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay.
But it can be very rewarding too. Yeah. And that's what I have found in my experience is just the relationships that have been cultivated over my time, over my family's time. I'm a fourth generation San Marcan. Okay. So, just being able to see and know all of that history has helped me in terms of just really being able to have an awareness of what's important to our community and to see how we give back and let it thrive and flourish in the way that it is.
I wonder if that changes the expectations some of the public have of you, knowing that you're from there, that you have been there. And while it looks wildly different than it did when you were growing up, I wonder if that changes some of their expectations of you.
Probably. I would say that it does, but it changes the expectations of myself because, I think a lot of city managers sometimes, it is like you're trying to balance that three-legged stool: community, council, organization.
Yeah.
And so for me, I'm heavily invested in all three. And so when I'm looking at a situation, I really am trying to make sure that we're trying to find as many wins as we can. And even if because in this business, we know that we're not, in this profession, we don't make everybody happy.
Yeah.
That's just the way that it is with public policy. You're going to have some that are, feeling like, okay, this is the way that I want things. And you're going to have others who don't.
Yeah.
But I try really hard to put myself in the shoes of the people that may not be in the best place with receiving some of those policy decisions, and just try to make sure that I remain as open to communication and discussion as I possibly can, so at least there's maybe an understanding and that we can try to, again, just keep our ears to the ground in terms of what's important.
Yeah. It's interesting you brought up the three-legged stool of community, council, and organization.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm weird, but I think it's a four-legged stool. I think there's community, I think there's council, organization, and then there's the city manager themselves. I'm curious, over the last 2 years, what have you learned about how you care for yourself, or how you need to care for yourself in that process? Because ultimately, you're one of the most important parts of that stool. And so what have you learned in this process?
Well, I've got two young children, a 10-year-old and a 13-year-old, and then my husband, obviously. And so it makes it really, really challenging, because not only are you working on your three-legged stool professionally, but you've also got the personal part of that. And so city manager fits in somewhere, my person fits in somewhere even after all of that, right?
Yes.
But I do try to make sure that I do take time for myself, if it is, because you're no good to anybody else if you don't first look and make sure that you're okay. And so so I'm a cancer survivor, breast cancer of, 5 years, thankfully. So I've hit my 5-year mark. And so it's even more important that I stay very intentional with how I'm feeling and stay in tune to how I'm feeling.
Yes.
And so I try to take those breaks where I possibly can. When I know we have a really busy week, then I try to, just take some balance time for myself, just to do something that is going to help me get out of the fray and be able to take care of myself, so that I can be better for all the individuals who are depending on having somebody be even keeled and try to be, not as emotional and too stressed out, to be able to make some of the decisions and things that we're going through. But I also rely a lot on my team, and that is helpful. I also want to model for them that you can have balance, and you have to try to have balance, because I think we can say, hey, take some time for yourself, or telework, or whatever, but if we don't do it ourselves, they find it hard to think that it's okay for them to do it. So I really try to keep that in mind as well. When
what does modeling that
off.
look like? Like when you do find that weird opportunity, because I know your schedule. I've done enough with the city of San Marcos to understand your schedule is crazier than anyone I've ever met. So knowing that, when you do have that weird opening and you have time, what does time for yourself look like, and how do you help your team understand, I'm disconnected right now, I'm going to go do something for me?
So usually I try to get massages.
Okay.
And so that
There you
means
go.
I'm going to turn my phone off and I'm going to be away for a while.
Yes.
And so I let them know, because again, just getting the endorphins and what that means, people may think of that as sometimes as like a foo-foo thing, but it's really important for me to really get back into homeostasis and to try to get the, just some of the bad juju, out of my body for a little bit of time.
City management,
yes. And so I will tell them, or maybe it's, hey, I just need a little bit of time to go and have just a little spa day, or I may go and spend some time with a friend, having a little bit longer lunch or something like that. Or sometimes it's me just being with my kids. And so I'll turn things off and go to a school, function or whatever it is that I need. The council has been great at being able to be supportive of me with that. And so,
which is a vital element.
Oh my gosh, it's a vital element. And I think just having those conversations with your council before you get into the role, I was very open with them and said, I am a working mother, but I don't want to be an absent mother. And so is this city council one that is going to support a working mother? And so that was something that was very, very crucial to me in understanding whether I was going to take this role or not, because I get one shot, right? We all get one shot with our kids, and they will remember whether you were there or not. So I try really hard to work around their schedules to make sure that I'm there for important things that they're a part of.
That's a vital conversation for anybody thinking about being a city manager. When you're negotiating with council, create that agreement ahead of time. Here's when I'm going to be available, and here's when I'm not. Right. I'm taking the city manager hat off, and I'm putting on the mom hat or the dad hat. That matters a lot.
Absolutely.
I love that you tell your team when you're doing that, because I know some leaders that convincing them to take the time for themselves is really hard, but they'll finally try it. Boy, they don't want anybody knowing they're doing it.
Yes.
And one of my favorite things, I will have an opening pop up on my schedule. Something gets moved, something gets canceled. I think actually I was talking to Emily the other day. I had an opening on my schedule, and she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And listen, we've always got a list of things to do. I said, "You know what? First thing, I'm going to look and see what's showing at the movies." Because one of my favorite things is sneaking away in the middle of a day when an opening happens and just going and seeing a movie.
Just going and seeing a movie.
Love doing that. And there was nothing showing I wanted to see, so I was like, "All right, I guess I'll work. This is the Lord's way of telling me to work right now." But ultimately, to say that and to say, hey, I as a professional am going to take time in the middle of my day to go do something for me, that models it really well.
Well, and it's hard because you are a public servant, and people's ideas, the community members' ideas of what a public servant is like you're available all the time around the clock, and that's just not practical.
Yeah.
And it's not effective.
The city staff as a whole is always on, always available.
Yes, absolutely.
But that can't be any individual leader.
That's true, but as far as like our public safety, folks, and as well as myself, we are expected to respond, at all hours of the night. So there are times where I'm getting, texts or things that are going on within our community. And so you don't get to turn off. So those are the things where, I try to say, okay, there are times when we just need to disconnect because that's going to help us be more effective leaders. But it's not always going to be the most popular thing to say if you're talking to somebody who may have a very rigid way of looking at what the role that you should be playing, and so I try again just to make sure I keep that balance, not to where that's my norm, but it's something that I do every now and then as needed.
Well, if you've done a good job investing in yourself and it's a regular rhythm, then when that call comes in at 3 a.m. that there's been a shooting or there's been an emergency, a pipe broke, and we've got a neighborhood without water, when that comes in, you're better able to handle it because you've been taking care of yourself. I think where we go wrong a lot is we don't honor those regular rhythms. We don't care for ourselves. Then when the call comes in, it's one more thing, not just this isolated emergency.
Very
and that's
true.
the work. That's the hard work, really. So in your career, so 20 plus years, that's impressive. What have you had to overcome internally as you've kind of climbed through those ranks from A2 to city manager?
So just believing in myself, and that's something because I've always looked to the people who believe in me and that see in me what I don't see in myself. I don't think if I had not had the leaders that came before me that said, hey, you've got this, you can do this, I don't know that I necessarily would have put myself there to do it. I really don't. And so it's all the folks who have come before me that have been able to just mentor and give me the gifts of experience. And I try to do my best to pay it forward to those that, are the next leaders for all of us for tomorrow, And so, but I think that that's really something I've had to overcome is just the self-doubt because that's just the human part of us. And you can say you're confident, but we're all human and we all are vulnerable. And we realize that there are parts of us that may not always fit with what these expectations are. So I guess for me, I've always really tried not to lose the authenticity of who I am, and not trying to fit a certain mold. Just being me, being, who I've always known myself to be, because if not, that will be a facade that I cannot keep up. And that would be even more exhausting and taxing. So I think just really trying to stay true. And I love that because my son, they are part of the community, my son and my daughter, and he'll go to things and people will tell him things about his mom being the city manager. And I just love that he says, well, that's just my mom. I don't know what you're talking about, And so, again, just trying to stay so that they see me in those different lights. But they do come with me when I go to different communities. Last Friday we had a ceremony to just kind of recognize our first responders who had been part of the swatting incident that we had at San Marcos High School. We wanted to really recognize their great work. And so the kids were off of school that day. I had a work from home day because I had to do parent-teacher conference in the middle of the day. And so I took them along with me, so that they could see, because I want them to recognize the different professionals that we have within our community and what they do to try to help to make sure that the community is better and safer, and that they can enjoy the things that they enjoy. So it's important for them to understand that.
Yeah. You mentioned the idea that you're always on, you're always engaged, right? And in that, what have you learned in the last couple of years about how you are able to navigate that? You set the agreement up with the council ahead of time, then elections happen, councils change. So is that an ongoing conversation that you're having with new council members as they come in?
Absolutely. So we do council orientation. So when we have new council members that come in, but it's also important to keep ongoing communication with my individual council members. And so, whether, and everybody's different. I have some council that want to meet every single month, and we do a meeting every single month. I have some that say, hey, you know what? I need you just to do what you need to do and be taking care of the city, and I'll call you or I'll text you if there's something that I need. So I try to do whatever it is that fits for them, but just making sure that we're having those conversations, keeping the relationship important. That's really key, is keeping that relationship so that they know that they can trust, who is Stephanie, right? Who is this person behind the city manager title? What are her intentions? How does she go about addressing certain things? How does she go about looking at situations? That's important for them to know the individual behind the title, because that helps to make sure that as we get through these tenuous things, we're going to make mistakes. Us being an organization that values innovation, what is the nature of innovation, right? You try things, they may not be successful,
some don't.
And some don't, right? And so we've got to make sure that whatever it is, that there's trust, that there's that integrity and that understanding that, okay, there are good intentions, even if there was a bad result.
Yes.
There are good intentions. And so having those relationships to be able to see the individuals behind some of what the public may see sometimes is really important for having, those ground rules between our council and our staff in terms of the trust.
That's really interesting, because if they get to know you more deeply, like you said, they start to learn how you think and how you make decisions. So then they're not just judging the decision that was made.
Exactly.
They kind of understand how you got there.
Exactly.
Which probably provides a different perspective, a little more grace, a little more, okay, I see what they were trying. That's really valuable, I think, for
it's
a lot
important,
of and
they know by now, and me working with them, that, my heart is I'm not about smoke and mirrors. And so if I mess up or my team messes up, we're going to own it. And we're gonna let you know that we did wrong, and hey, this is what we're gonna do in the future to do better. And so again, that's very important, because they know we're not messing up for messing up's sake or trying to call it something that it's not. And so I think what my experience has been is that has been a key part of a successful management council relationship.
I like that. And was that something that was modeled for you, or something you've learned as you've kind of been in this role?
I've learned just in my time in city management and seeing, because I've working for the 6 city managers prior, I see how the pendulum swings. And you have, some managers, they just have different styles, right? And it doesn't mean one's bad or good. It's just they're different. And so I've seen the pendulum swing from people who are very business, try to keep all of the staff stuff, and the council stuff, keep that really fine line there. And then I've seen others where it's a little more fluid.
Yeah.
And so, I don't take a hard stance against council talking with my staff, but I do tell my staff, hey, if it's something that I need to know about, I need to make sure that you let us know so that we can just not be blindsided. And I also tell the council, hey, as long as you're approaching it as any ordinary citizen who would be calling in, because I understand it's really hard when you're in different roles, right? Sometimes it doesn't mean that you have to give up your rights as just a citizen when you're a council member. I know people see you differently, and so you have to be cognizant of that. Not everybody can separate that. They still are going to see you as a council member when you're calling in for something. But if you have a question about something that, an ordinary citizen could have a question about, I'm okay with you, calling some of my direct reports and talking with them. And not all my city managers before have felt that way, And so again, it's just trying to figure out, what helps to meet the needs of the organization and the council that still doesn't, make things run amok to where there's unintended consequences of doing that.
Now, your career to get to city management, so you started as an A2. You kind of took a little bit of a non-traditional path. I may be misremembering this. Did you serve as an assistant city manager before becoming city manager? Okay, you did. Okay.
I did, but I was I was assistant 2, and I did that for 12 years.
Okay.
I also did some economic development. I served as an interim director of economic development during that 12-year time frame, but it was through the chamber, and so because we had that partnership with the chamber, and I didn't want to go and stop working for the city, so I did it in an interim capacity, and then I was assistant director of human resources for about 5 years, and that was really a great experience because again, in city management and in the city manager, department, I was able to work a lot on stakeholders and external constituencies and understanding, the policymaking process. But as assistant director of HR, I was able to really get in tuned with the internal organization much more deeply. And
get
so
to see both sides of
get
it.
to see both sides and be a little more well-rounded in regard to understanding our policies, our processes internally, getting to, have that trust and credibility with our employees. And so after 5 years of serving as that, then I served as the chief of staff back in the city manager's office, and then interim assistant city manager, interim city manager, then finally city manager. So definitely have had
every step along the way.
Yes. So because I was kind of served in those different capacities, and they've all been great learning experiences for me, and I've grown, and I wouldn't have had my path be any other way because it's been a really great time, and I've learned something, from every step of the process.
Well, and something you mentioned earlier was you're a breast cancer survivor. So 5 years. Congratulations on that, by the way. I know how hard that is. Did that give you a different perspective on life, on work, on all the things you do in public service?
Absolutely. So I'm a very different person. I don't know that honestly, Chad, I don't know that I would be the same city manager pre-breast cancer that I am post-breast cancer.
Interesting.
Just the perspective that I have is a lot different. I've grown as a human. I've grown just as an individual in terms of really being able to say, okay, what really is important, and keeping the main thing.
I hear you say that a lot.
So that's and our police chief says it a lot too. And so it is. It's just trying to keep the main thing, not getting the ego out of it, and really just making sure that we're looking at things as important as it can, and the things that I was a worrywart. Before breast cancer, I was a worrywart. I worried about everything. And there's this peace within me that I can't explain, but I have this internal peace that I never thought I would have about me. And I really do attribute it to having to fight for my life, having to have my own, kind of mortality put in front of me. And then breast cancer is one of those things that as a woman, all of your things that make you feel like a woman, all the vanity that comes with being a woman, sometimes it goes out the window. When you lose your hair and you know, all the things that you really point to, it as a woman, it makes things really, 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 really tough. But I loved that it helped my children see that you're the same person regardless of what you look like on the outside. You know, the inner core is still the inner core, and you have to make sure that you're judging people that way versus judging in a way of, okay, what do you look like, and being more surface, right? And so I do feel like that has really changed me in a lot of ways, and I'm able to have a lot more discernment than probably I did before in regard to how I approach different situations.
Well, part of it is the perspective of seeing the big picture at that point, right? When you see, does this truly matter? And the truly matter is entirely different pre and post breast cancer. You and I have talked, my wife went on that journey last year, and it's a hard journey. And it's one that I don't think ego survives intact. It changes, and it is hard to go through some of those things and be the same, but I don't know that we should be. I think you're probably a better city manager today. You're a better mom and wife today because of those things.
I believe so. I really do. I see a difference in myself, you know, from those times. And, you know, I will tell you just kind of a little bit of just in me is that there were times where before I had breast cancer, I would wonder what my purpose was. You know, and what, God, what is my purpose? What am I to fulfill? I'm in this public servant role, but what is my purpose? And so when the city manager job kept coming to me, because believe me, I was trying to walk away. I was like, nope, this is not what I want to do, because I know how challenging it is. And especially, again, for the love I have for my community, I knew it was going to be a challenge. And so I tried to walk away from it, and it kept, you know, finding its way back to me. And so finally I said, God, is this what my next step is? Is this my purpose? Is this what you expect me to do? And this is what I'm meant to do. And so just the way that things are, and the way things work out, all the things I worried about getting in the way of me being city manager just seem to work their way out very, very easily. And that's when you know that you're doing the right thing and you're in the right place of where you're supposed to be in that point in time. It won't always be that way. I know that, you know, I will have my time, and I will do what I can while I can and while I feel I'm of value. But after that, it's going to be time for me to step away and let somebody else come in and have their time to shine and do the thing that's the next steps that we need to keep the forward progress moving.
So I'm curious if you'll have an answer for this, because city manager is a job. Purpose is about how you show up and serve others, whether it's your family or the public or your staff. What is your purpose based on what you've been through? How would you identify your purpose today?
I'm still trying to figure it all out.
Okay.
But I feel like my purpose right now, just kind of what I can say, you know, I'm on the journey, let's put it that way, to really understand how we make our mark on the organization, on the community. We're looking at some transformational things that we're looking at for our community that are going to really help to take us to the next level with projects. But as a bigger thing, because me, it's all about the people, right? And the people, because we can't do our jobs. They're our biggest asset, and we can't do anything for serving the community if we don't have the right people to do that. So for me, it's about trying to believe in making sure that the people know we believe in them and we value them and we appreciate them. So every juncture that I have, that I try to get out there and connect with my employees, connect with our team, make sure that they understand that they know what they're doing matters, it makes a difference, and that we see them. So if it's even, I try to get out like once a year to kind of go out to do all the employee body. But then throughout that time, there's other departments that we're visiting for different things. You know, we have different employee events. But as far as letting them know, like what's happening with their benefits, what's happening with their compensation, the things that are important to them, doing employee engagement surveys, we've been able to do a couple of those, and the response rate has been amazing. We've had over 50% of our workforce that respond because they have the belief, and we communicate with them that we're using that to help build our decisions. And we don't know what we don't know. And so this is their opportunity to make sure that we are hearing from them about what's important. So as we're crafting different things, we do that.
Yeah.
Being a post-COVID world and me taking over as city manager post-COVID, it was even more important for me to get out there immediately and start working with our community and with our employees to make sure that they saw, their administration, because there had been some of that time where we weren't all together. Yeah. We were having to distance, and some of the workforce wasn't on site, while we had others that had to be there every day. And so for us to be able to connect and say, hey, look, I understand that this has not been always something that's looked at as a fair thing, that y'all have had to be here and not everybody else has. But no, we're working together, and, we're trying to find ways that we can have some balance, even for you who are field workers that may not be able to telework, but maybe there's modified work schedules and things like that we can do that still help you achieve some level of balance, because it's going to look different. Yeah. Whether you're an office person or whether you're a field crew member, but we can still try to find something that fits everyone.
So if you're through building those connections, you mentioned earlier that one of your favorite thing was the people that came before you, that believed in you, that said you're capable of more, you can do this. Through those connections, you get to do that for other people in your organization. Yes. Does that just light your soul up when you get to do that for people?
Yes, that's where I draw a lot of energy from. Yeah. This job can take a lot from you as far as, I was a big extrovert, I would say, probably before getting into city administration. And now I've become a lot more of an introvert because I really value that time, right, that I get to myself. And so I don't draw my energy from others, and with the exception of when I am helping and I see the value of being able to pay it forward, that does just send this amazing sense of pride in being able to do that. I love talking with, the next generation of public administrators, whether if I'm talking to a class at Texas State or if I'm talking to folks, at the Texas City Management Conference or something of that nature, and just being able to say, okay, here's some of the things that we've learned along my journey. And your journey may look completely different, but it's always gleaning those experiences that you can try to help others hey, here's just something you may want to pay attention to, and so that at least they have some awareness.
So let's fast forward a decade. Your 10-year-old, your 13-year-old are going, okay, what do I do with my life? And they start looking at public service. What do you tell them?
Oh, it's so funny that you said that or that you asked me that question, because I think my 13-year-old, my son, he has been trying to figure his way out, in terms of like, what does he want to do? Because they're, of course, in middle school, they start, what do you want to be and all those kinds of things. And so when he saw on Friday, getting up in front of the crowd and doing all that, he said, Mom, I don't know, I'm really interested in your job. And so that was something that we talked about. And I just said, well, that's something that we can continue to have conversations about. I don't know how I really feel about it, because it could be a tough, you've got to put yourself out there.
The reality is the getting to stand in front of the troops and give a speech and be that. That's like 0.5% of the job. The other 99.5% is really hard.
And he sees that too. That's the other part. There's those days when I have city council meetings and they don't get to see Mom.
Because Mom got home at 2 a.m.
Mom got home at whatever time, right? And so they watch the meetings sometimes, and they see that there's not always sunshine and roses that people are saying. And there have been some critical comments that are made specifically about their mom. And so that hurts. But I do try. It hurts them. It hurts, for me, I know it's part of the thing. None of us, for all of us that can say, oh, we have thick skin. Yeah, we have thick skin. It doesn't mean it doesn't still affect us when somebody says something, especially when you're putting your heart and soul into stuff and you know that it's misinformation, misunderstanding, or things like that, or it's a misconception about a particular thing. But I do use those moments to talk to my kids about, kind of like bullying moments when they've had certain things that I've been like, hey, this is part of life, and you're not always going to have everybody who feels a certain way about you. And so talking about that, or if they haven't made a certain thing, like my son didn't make the track team or my daughter didn't make a certain part in the play, I try to talk about the decision-making process and how hard the decision-making process is also, because as much as you want to, make the decision that includes everybody, you can't always do that.
Yeah.
So I do try to use those kinds of things for life lessons for them, and showing how it applies to what I'm doing, to what their lives are, and see that it's still part of you even when you grow up.
They're getting an interesting backstage view of this, and it's funny. It's kind of like I know some people who their moms or dads were in city management, and they're like, I want nothing to do with that. And I know some who are in it because their parents were in city management.
Absolutely.
That's really interesting.
So it'll be my daughter will not want to be a city manager. I can tell you that already. She's the
actor, right?
Yes, she's very theatrical, artistic. If she could
you
do,
could be a good city manager as an artistic, theatrical person.
I don't know. You got to be a little more slow and steady than her temperament is.
It's also interesting how city management is about letting other people be the star.
Yes.
And not letting the council be the star, letting the staff be the star. That's going to be hard for a person who wants to be the star.
Yes, that's exactly right. So I know for her that would be a different dynamic, and maybe her temperament's not there. We'll still see. The jury's out on my son on what he decides to do, but I definitely know there's an interest there from where what the conversations we've been having.
There's an interesting middle ground as we're just talking about this that I'm thinking about. As a city manager, you are in many ways at the center of the show, but if you're doing your job well, you're not the star of the show. But I think there's also a lot of people that go, oh, city management, that's the top job. That's what I want, because they want to be the star. My guess is they probably don't make the best city managers.
And that's the thing. I didn't want to be. I'm an operations person. I loved being an assistant city manager, because I liked being able to let others be in the spotlight, and it wasn't something that I had to myself do. And so that's been another thing to just really try to embrace, because as much as you try to be in the background, it's not always that way. Me being from the community, people very much look to, and I'm the first, female city manager in San Marcos. And so, just what that represents to some of, my hometown folks is really important. And so it's trying to find that balance, but look, there's no I in what I do. There is a we in everything that we do, because it's important that, and we're very collaborative. You've worked with our team.
You are.
And I don't like the silo mentality, because it takes all of us to work together. It takes all of us to have different perspectives so that we can come up with something that's a much better result. And so we always talk with each other about things that are going on. My staff meetings are sacred. If I'm not able to do it on the day that we have scheduled, every Tuesday morning we do our staff meetings. If I can't do it on a Tuesday, or there's something that comes in between that, we always make sure we make up for it. And so it's really important to have that FaceTime with our team, just to be able to say, okay, here, look, it's devoted access to each other, to be able to share what we're going through and what we're talking about, because it just creates that awareness for all of us, and how we can support and best assist each other.
Yeah. You mentioned being an operations person at heart. As a city manager, how do you stay connected to operations and dip down into that without getting so deep into it that your ACMs and your directors are going, hey, why is she down here dealing with this?
So it depends on the types of initiatives. So I try to have, like right now we're working through a One City, One Voice. That's the name we have, for it right now. It may be branded something different later. But really trying to say we are one team. Even though we may have, individual department identities, we're one team. So the things that involve operations in terms of how I want us to be looked at as one team, I get involved in those bigger initiatives. I will, I'll turn it over to one of my assistant city managers or somebody else to kind of run it. But I'm there just to make sure that if I need to chime in on something, then I do that, as far as trying to, understand contextually. But I do try to really stay out of their business. I still have a couple of departments that report to me, and so that's where I stay involved operationally.
Okay.
And that is our finance and budget still reports to me, so I stay involved with the budget, and that's the bigger picture part of things. And then also our communications, because that's the voice of the city. I need to make sure that how we're, how we're connecting with council, what we're informing council about, what we're informing the community members about, all of those, what we inform the organization about, all of those things are really, really important. I did have human resources under me as well until recently, and so that was something where I was able to, hand that off to one of my assistant city managers. It's an important function, and I need to make sure that somebody's able to give it the time that it deserves more than I'm able to give.
And it's so crucial.
It's crucial.
To the entire
Absolutely.
city.
Absolutely.
Speaking of your ACMs, you recently had 2 of your 3 ACMs retire within a couple months of each other.
Yes.
Long tenured, so much institutional knowledge there. And you've brought in 2 new ones who are both very, very talented and doing a great job. That's a lot of change, though, really fast. Have any challenges or any learnings come out of that transition?
Well, the way things have worked out for us has been amazing because one of the 2 that I brought on was Rodney Gonzalez.
Yes.
So he's new in his role to us here in San Marcos.
But
not really, because he's coming back home.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, that organic way that things work out, because yes, it's very scary, not only for me, but also for our team, that's having to see all of this change. Their direct bosses are changing, and they want to make sure that, that we're picking good people that are going to come in and still be able to, keep up the synergy, but also just the culture that we've developed. And so having Rodney come and be a part of our team, and he did it, albeit as an interim, and then he said, "Oh, I love it. I'm gonna go for the job." And so I think that helped so that it wasn't so scary for us. And then Lonzo Anderson, coming from the city of Dallas and just knowing the phenomenal individual that he is as well.
He has a deep history in law enforcement.
He has a deep history in law enforcement. We have some trust issues with some members of our community, and so we're working to try to go through that, unpack it, and understand it better, and then see maybe what has been some of his experience, in Dallas that he can bring to us here in San Marcos, to understand how we can be better and be more, just accepting of the different ways of looking at things, but also how we navigate those things to try to do it in a more positive way, and have people look at their police officers in a much more positive way than maybe some do. And again, it doesn't mean that's how the whole community feels, but I have to acknowledge there are some members of our community who do feel that way. So we've just got to make sure that we're looking at that from the full picture. And so he's been wonderful to do that. And then I have Joe Pintalion, who is an assistant city manager and has been with us for about going on, I believe, 4 or 5 years, right before COVID started. And so at one time when Chase and Lori were both retiring, and there still is a tremendous amount of respect that I have for both Chase and Lori. And we just had so much history working together in our different capacities. We all grew up in different ways in the organization. And so for us to come together, it was such a highlight having that. But when they were deciding to go ahead and embark on their next chapters, I remember looking at Joe saying, "It's just you and me, bud."
No pressure.
No pressure. It's just you and me, bud. And so we're going to work through and make sure. And one thing was for certain, is that we made a pact that things had to be as good or better with whoever it is that we chose, because we were not willing to go backwards in our culture. I've seen,
and that's a high bar, because Chase and Lori set a really high bar.
Oh, absolutely. And just the relationships that they had community wide, as well as organizationally, all of those things. And so and council, there was a lot of history there, and a very big precedent in terms of what the expectations are for whoever are filling these roles. So yes, it was like, we've got to have at least this good or better. We're not going back. I mean, we had a time where our city management team wasn't as cohesive and collaborative. And again, just because of change and different people, different personalities, different philosophies. No, trying to be disparaging on anybody. It just was the way things were. And so seeing a thriving team in the way that we have been able to build, it's important that we continue continue to build upon that and continue that forward progress.
Well, and it's interesting you brought that up about having a team in the past that's been that way. When we're not intentional about something, it naturally kind of drifts apart. It's the second, I think it's the second law of thermodynamics that states everything is naturally moving towards disorganization. If you've ever experienced that, if you've ever, anybody watching this, if you've ever had a city management team that didn't work together particularly well, it's because nobody probably spent the time to intentionally bring it back together, bring it in shape, say, here's who we want to be as a city management office. And that's such vital work that often gets missed.
I agree, and I think that was because of being so invested in seeing our team thrive. I had seen the dysfunctional part of it, that it was like, we can't have this. Because I had also seen when we were high functioning, and albeit different people around the table, different people in the room, but I had seen a thriving team, and so I wanted to get back there. I knew how much of a wonderful career it was to be a part of the city of San Marcos at one time, but then I also saw how, there was some things that just needed to change. And so being so invested, getting in there and saying, hey, look, y'all, this is our team. This is our organization. You are the culture. Each of you is the culture. And so how are we going to work together to make sure that it's positive? This isn't a high school popularity contest. This isn't those kinds of dynamics, right? And no, this is us showing leadership and being able to be what we need to for our team members, because if they start hearing the chinks in the armor and they start hearing that you're having all of these problems, don't vent down, because I think that's the struggle is the higher you get in an organization, the less people you have that you can safely talk to and vent to when you have certain things going on. And so, we can all be guilty of doing it sometimes around the wrong people. No bad intentions. It just is, right? And you start to vent to your staff, and then they hear that, and then that starts to perpetuate itself in a negative way. So it's been really important for us to have the conversations, create the safe space for us to not always agree on things when we have directors meetings and things like that, but be able to talk about them and know that when we leave the room, we have to be on the same team, and we have to be on the same page, and we have to be able to communicate as one voice.
Y'all are really, just the journey we've been on with you, you're really in this season of really learning how to have some of those harder conversations and being willing to do that. I've sat in rooms with you with people, and we've had some really tough conversations, but there's a willingness to tackle that and do that. And that is the hard work of bringing the team back together and making sure that that's happening. And you talk about thriving, and our part of our calling and our purpose at Forward Partners, we want to really facilitate a movement towards thriving for public service staffs and for the people involved. What do cities need to completely rethink for the future in order for their people to thrive on a more regular basis?
I think it's trying to really identify, where are their dysfunctions, and we all have them. So trying to figure out where the dysfunction is, and then how you can make a difference just by turning the dials a little bit. I mean, there were times where, I would have some of my directors team who would say, "Oh, why can't you just do this?" And I'd say, "Look, if you put that I'm a captain of the ship, right? And if I turn the ship very, very slowly, then I'm going to bring a lot more people along with me, because we've got to recognize that, we're not leaders without followers, and we're not going to get, the things that we need to get done if we don't get it done through other people. And so if we can turn the ship slowly and make sure we're going through change management, because that's a critical part. Not everybody does well with change and different, right? And so trying to make sure that you're doing things in a way that is very intentional, that you're understanding where there is dysfunction, that you're calling those things to light. Don't ignore them, because it's just going to fester and get worse. But you try to put those things out there. And I'm comfortable with conflict. Even though I don't know that necessarily I love it.
And you don't crave it.
No, I don't. But I'm comfortable with it enough that I can say, we have a problem and we need to see how we're going to work it out, right? And I'll call that to the attention. So I think, and so I'd say, but alternatively, when I'm using the ship analogy, if I go and try to turn the ship and jerk it and just make a huge change, more people are going to fall off that ship. And so we're going to lose more people. And so again, you've got to make sure that we're really trying to think about your organization. put your yes, put what you want to get done there, but then put it on a parking lot and think, okay, how am I going to customize it for my team? And you are not going to make that decision on your own in a vacuum. You've got to bring more people along with you to get that buy-in, because that's how you're going to make sure that you're going to get a better result, and not a top-down kind of, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to do it. No, none of us have the answers to everything.
To that.
No.
And it's funny you talk about the ship analogy, and I love the idea of, we've got to slow down and we've got to understand change is hard and requires so much patience. Because the director that comes to you and says, well, why don't you just, we've got words we're not allowed to use anymore. One of them's easy. When I come up with an idea, I go, oh, this will be easy. Immediately I get these looks like, we're not allowed to say easy, because it's never as easy as we think. And what if you just fired this person and this person and this person? Do you really want an organization where the answer to everything is, we're just going to fire these people and it's done? Because you don't want to be a part of that organization. Because
that's a great point.
If you go through a season where you're not doing well, what do? We just fire people,
I had that even as an assistant city manager. I had a director who would say, well, why don't you just tell the council this or that? And I'm like, and I'm just like, and
why don't you get up there and just do it?
Well, and not only that, but it's also being able to say, look, I'm not going to help you if I alienate them, if I alienate the city council, and I do so in a way that isn't bringing them along to understand where we're at, I don't help you. I'm not effective for you. And so it's trying to make sure that people see the forest for the trees and understanding that. And so with council, I am very direct. I will talk with them, but in a very professional way. I don't disrespect them. And in fact, one of my council members it's comical to him, because he says, I can tell whenever we're going off astray, he goes, I remember, well, he says, no, he said that I remind him of his mother, who would talk to him real quickly in Spanish. And so when he starts hearing me talk real fast, then he knows that, oh gosh, I'm straying away from where I need to.
That is really funny.
So it's really funny how you develop those kind of idiosyncrasies, but also that they understand those little things about you, those little cues that are nonverbal, and so you just with anybody, whether it's a spouse or any relationship, you have to learn, okay, what are those nonverbal cues? What are those, the eye contact, the body language, all the things that you just kind of try to take notice of and try to make sure that you're very aware of your surroundings, how it's being received, by whomever it is that you're delivering your message to. And then just, again, trying to make sure that you're being intentional in how you're delivering it.
The previous guest from our last episode we recorded with LaShawn Ross, she's the deputy city manager in Plano. We talked about this idea that you have to really slow down in everything you do, and really, especially conversations, go, well, what is the goal? Well, if you would just is a speed thing, right? It's a, how do we get this off our plate as fast as possible, versus the patience to slow down and go, hold on, I could just go do that. What are the follow-on effects of that? Does that actually get us closer to our goal or further away from our goal? And people don't do that very well, I think. They get impatient.
And I think if you just this or that, it's knee-jerk. And you don't always have the best results with knee-jerk reactions. So
rarely do you.
Trying to stop when you can, and I understand there are some times where you have to make split decisions, but again, there's time for everything. And whether it's crisis management or something like that, yes, sometimes you have to make those split decisions. But when you're dealing with people, again, if it wasn't for people, I used to have a police chief who would say that our jobs would be easy. And that's true, and so
but you also
people,
wouldn't have a job.
we wouldn't have a job. It's job security, but you've got to keep the people, in mind with how you're doing things, because what you do, in public service, it's not widgets, it's people, right? Everything that we do is serving people. And so you've got to make sure that how is it being received by those people in order for you to really keep that in mind, keep that at the forefront. And so you can't just say, oh, just do this or just do that. It's not that simple.
It's interesting you mentioned that, there are those crisis points where you have to make a choice. This is the talk I give in law enforcement all the time, where we talk about the idea that we can slow down, and they're like, no, we gotta move fast. We gotta make the choices. Yeah. If you're about to kick a door in on a raid, that is not the time to go, hold on, guys, have we really thought this through? Like, that was a while ago. We should have already thought it through at that point. So you got to make split decisions in an emergency situation. Is it hard in city management sometimes to not feel like everything is an emergency situation?
Other people's emergencies don't dictate our emergency, and that
Which is logically true.
I mean, it is, but I do recognize that sometimes there are those things. I mean, let's face it. When we're dealing with the kinds of things that we do as city government, some people's emergencies are our emergencies, and so you have to discern again what are those things, but sometimes they're not, and so you have to try to make sure that you're looking at, okay, is this something that is going to make a decision for somebody, like an immediate thing one way or the other, or is it something that can wait a little bit because we're going to have a better result at the end? If it's somebody that's experiencing food insecurity, housing insecurity, something like that, obviously that is our emergency if they're experiencing that kind of an emergency. But sometimes if it's people who have put off scheduling a special event or have put off going through processes and then, things aren't going to, work a certain way.
We need your help now.
Then that's when it's like, okay, look, we still have to make sure that we're ensuring the public health and safety as much as we don't want to rain on your parade, literally, that we don't want to do that, but we still have to make sure that, we can't say you don't have to have a food handler's card, or you don't have to have those safety measures that you need to in order to make sure that there's not going to be like a listeria outbreak or something like that happens, and then, we cut corners, and so then we have culpability. So we just have to make sure, again, that there's that discernment and that we don't take a one-size-fits-all approach. Consistency is important in government, but you also have to recognize there are differences and nuances to each situation, and you have to take those nuances into consideration as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. This speaks to the steadiness you were talking about earlier, that a city manager provides a steadiness and a calm, and that's so vital because my guess is when problems come into your office, they are probably presented as an emergency. And you have to be in a good enough place, a healthy enough place to really judge, is this truly an emergency and how are we going to approach it?
Exactly. And that's why it's talking through it with your team to really understand, and make sure you understand it the best that you possibly can.
Get all the context.
And then eventually you've got to be a calculated risk taker. I'm not risk averse, but I am a calculated risk taker. I've got to make sure that we have as much information as we can without sacrificing the result that's needed in terms of speed. Can't get into analysis paralysis, and we know we're not going to have a perfect result all the time, but I've got to be able to, to justify to our constituents, to our council members, to our organization about this was the information we had at the time, and this is why we made the decision that we did. Hindsight will always be clearer.
Yes.
Always. But did you make the best decision that we could have, knowing all the circumstances and knowledge that we had at the time?
Yeah.
And so that's the part that we have to be able to justify.
Yeah, I love it. Stephanie, this has been an incredible interview. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking, about our profession because it's a changing profession. It's a complicated profession, but it's so worth it. It really is. It's something that I now that I'm here, I wouldn't see myself doing anything different.
It's so worth it. That's a perfect way to end this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you for joining us for Leading Thriving Cities. If you'd like to find out more about what we do at Forward Partners, you can find us at www.forwardpartners.net. We love partnering with cities to learn how to develop healthy leaders and thriving teams. We do that through a variety of means, from leadership coaching to online courses to facilitating retreats. If you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out. You can also find us online with all the different socials, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We are putting out content all the time, and you can find it at Forward Partner.